All for One's Guide to a Peaceful Retirement. Written by ScottishSunshine and read for you by Eleanor Elizabeth. Chapter 26. Work on your sob story. Summary. Hazashi has the day off, which is good because Nezu has turned up on his doorstep with a few interesting theories. Izuku, age 6. Although All for One was not known to the general public, he was of course familiar to many of the higher levels of law enforcement, and undoubtedly most, if not all of them, believed that the hero most suited to take him on, most likely to succeed in the face of his overwhelming power, was All Might. They were very wrong. All Might is undoubtedly powerful, Hazashi will admit, but that was his defining feature. He is strong, yes, and seems to be somewhat familiar with psychology, but there are heroes that could make better use of One for All than some formerly quirkless high schooler. Heroes that, with the right amount of planning, could perhaps end the threat of All for One forever. Heroes like Nezu. Hazashi bites back a curse as the mouse/bear/thing beams up at him. "Good morning," the principal greets him, apparently unaware that Hazashi had some very important plans for the day. Plans that did not include strange animals turning up on his doorstep. Since Izuku is safe, enjoying a sleepover at the Ida household, being watched by no less than 5 pro heroes, 2 older Todoroki boys, and, most importantly, Kurogiri, he had intended to visit Inko and beg for her forgiveness. He suspects he's only still alive because she isn't sure whether Rei or Ida would be best to take over raising Izuku. Hazashi somehow resists the urge to incinerate the creature and start rooting through the house for anything that might get him drunk. Instead, he summons up his best impression of a law-abiding citizen, quirks an eyebrow and asks, "Can I help you?" "Oh, I don't know," the principal shrugs, that infuriating smile still firmly on his face, his snout. "I was thinking perhaps we could help each other, but, well, such matters are best discussed over tea." Because he doesn't want to make a scene, and if Nezu is here, the hero has put in place at least 15 contingency plans, Hazashi lets out a long-suffering sigh and moves aside. He leaves the principal to clamber onto the couch and instead busies himself preparing a nice pot of tea in the kitchen, and exhibiting considerable restraint by not checking to see whether rat poison would have any effect on the hero. "Thank you." Nezu smiles as he accepts a cup, and Hazashi sits down opposite him. "So, what brings you to my humble abode?" he asks. "Oh, well, I was recently contacted about a rather curious case," Nezu hums. "The police were interested in my opinion on your son's recent misadventure, and, well, after reading over the report, I only had more questions, so I thought it would be best to just come straight to the source." "I thought the matter was straightforward." Hazashi raises an eyebrow. "Izuku was kidnapped. The abductors obviously wanted me to withdraw money from the bank." "Yes, but why was no one there when you arrived?" Nezu questions. "Why would they leave their insurance, Izuku, lying around? Why would they not be there when you arrived? Why risk the 2 of you escaping like you did? There's always the possibility that they were distracted by someone, perhaps a hero, but then why would you not see anything? Why would a hero not report the incident?" "Maybe the kidnappers had a falling out between themselves," Hazashi points out. "Or maybe they were in a conflict with some other villains, and a confrontation occurred." "Yes, but I still keep coming back to why there was no one there when you arrived," Nezu hums and cocks his head to the side. "But then I realised, perhaps it wasn't the kidnappers that wanted you there." "What?" "And then everything makes sense," Nezu chuckled. "Izuku is a young child. He is taken, kidnapped, from school, presumably for ransom, and of course he's afraid. He wants to go home. But who would he want more than anything in that moment? Who would be able to make everything better? Who would make him feel safe? I'd wager in that moment, Izuku does not want Ingenium or All Might or any other hero that could come save him. He wanted his father." "Are you suggesting that Izuku somehow, I don't know, stole a quirk, figured out how to use it, and summoned me from the middle of Tokyo?" Hazashi laughs and shakes his head. Fuck. "Exactly," Nezu beams. "Oh, fuck. How on earth would Izuku steal a quirk?" Hazashi asks. "I mean, do you think he has some sort of Secondary quirk? I mean, I suppose it's possible, but... Midoriya, please. Nezu sighs, and suddenly looks like he's aged considerably. I know. No, what? I know Izuku has all for one. Fuck! He has what? Could we please do away with this charade? The principal asked with a sigh. I know Izuku, and you, have all for one. I know you are fully aware of who all for one is, and I know why you don't want to admit it. Hazashi mentally prepares himself. If he destroys enough of Tokyo, the heroes will be busy with the rescue efforts. That will give him enough time to get to Izuku. There will be a large death toll, so the Midoriyas will hopefully just become another name on the list that go missing. But all for one is dead. Wait, what? It's all right, Midoriya, Nezu assures him, and Hazashi stares at him in disbelief. I went over all the files before coming over here, and I can assure you, all for one is dead. He was killed over a decade ago by a hero named Nana Shimura. Izuku's abduction, as far as we can tell, is completely unrelated. Oh, thank goodness. Hazashi breathes, and he feels a great surge of relief wash over him. He still needs to tread carefully to make sure Nezu has no reason to doubt him. But at least all for one can, for now at least, stay dead. He suspects he knows what Nezu believes, and even if he's wrong, it's a good cover story, so he takes a deep breath and commits himself to the lie. I wondered why he hadn't contacted me in such a long time, especially after Izuku was born. I'm sorry we couldn't inform you earlier. Nezu winces. It never occurred to us that all for one might have a family. Please, Hazashi snorts. He needs to sell this performance, and if it means making himself into the personification of all things evil, so be it. The word family implies there might have been some affection there. He wanted a way to store quirks, and decided it would be easiest if there was someone else with all for one. I see. Nezu shakes his head. I am a teacher first, Midoriya. To hear someone had so little regard for any child, let alone their own, I am truly sorry. It was difficult at first. Hazashi sighs and smiles as his eyes settle on a photo of Inko. This is why I'm doing it. But when I became an adult, he left me alone for the most part. Probably didn't want me to be a target for heroes, and when I met my wife, when Izuku was born, it felt like I could leave it all behind me. I could just be the father that I never had. But then he shudders, and it's not entirely an act. But then Izuku was kidnapped, and you had made the logical assumption that it was all for one, Nezu quietly finishes. Yes, Hazashi nods. The desperation in his voice, the pain, are real, because he keeps on thinking of a tiny, confused boy locked up in Tartarus. But I couldn't do anything. Couldn't tell anyone. I thought he'd taken Izuku, and I'd never... It's all right, the principal assures him. I personally checked all of the reports. All for one was confirmed dead, his remains identified and buried. There might still be former followers of his out there, but if there are, you probably know them better than me. Not really, Hazashi shrugs, once again relieved that he put so much effort into his retirement. I was kept well away from all of his shady dealings. The only one I know is Gigantomachia, and he is loyal to only me and Izuku. Nezu nods, and they sit in silence for a few seconds. Then, the hero shifts uncomfortably. I hesitate to bring it up, but have you considered that perhaps it's best, all for one, ends? I did, Hazashi admits quietly. That, more than anything he ever did as all for one, is probably his greatest shame. Second greatest, his conscience ruthlessly corrects him. But what if Izuku one day has children of his own? What if he realizes I took his quirk? He's all I have. I can't lose him. You have a point, Nezu sighs. But still, I suggest you limit the number of people that know about all for one. I do not think that you or your son should be punished for someone else's actions, but not everyone will be so understanding. Of course, Hazashi agrees. So far, you are the only person outside of the family that knows. There is also Officer Tsukashi, Nezu admits. He was concerned about your lies and contacted me. I explained my suspicions to him, and he agreed that you deserve a chance, and I felt it would be good to have someone on your side in the police force. It appears Officer Tsukashi's file is going to go missing for a few hours tonight. I suppose it's for the best, Hazashi sighs. However, I'd like to be informed before you tell anyone else about our family secret. Of course, Nezu nods, and then he smiles. Perhaps in a few years Izuku might like to visit UA. I have to admit, I looked over what information I could, and he sounds like a charming boy. Oh, yes, Hazashi smiles, and then he winces at the thought of suggesting a visit to UA. He'd like that. Well, actually, him and his friends all want to be heroes when they're older. Oh, wouldn't that be something? Nezu laughs, and laughs, and laughs. Finally, he wheezes. All for one's grandson, a student at UA. I'm just glad it's the grandson, Hazashi snorts. It would be like the plot of some bad movie if it was the son. They exchange smiles and, strangely enough, Hazashi feels better, lighter, because perhaps this is for the best. Perhaps Izuku will be able to be honest with his friends and tell them the truth about his quirk. Perhaps Izuku will be able to go to a school where he can train his quirk without worrying about coming up with a cover story. Perhaps Izuku will have teachers that he can trust. Perhaps Izuku can even become a hero. Then a warp gate opens, and Hazashi just has time to brace himself. Oh my god, it's Principal Nezu! Chapter 27. Sometimes friendship hurts. Summary. The boys find out something about Izuku. Izuku, age 6. Tenya always thought he got really lucky with his friends. They are very different people, true, but Tenya liked to think that they could learn from their different experiences, their different perspectives, and if he was even the least bit unsure, that was enough to reassure him. But now, as he settles into his futon, he's not sure about his own role. Izuku has been released from the hospital for a few days now, and Uncle Hazashi suggested one last sleepover before he goes back to school. Both Izuku and Shoto had loved the idea, but Tenya almost didn't come. He tries not to spoil the mood, but somewhere between dinner and settling down to read comics, the other boys seem to pick up on it. So, for the first time ever, Izuku does not suggest that they sneak out for quirk testing, and Tenya feels even more lost, because his main role in the past was to prevent his friends from doing anything foolish. And now, he doesn't know what he's supposed to do. Finally, Uncle Hazashi comes to tuck them all in. Tenya curls up with his Ingenium plush and watches miserably as the man pauses at the door. But then, Izuku's dad shakes his head and leaves, and Tenya settles down to sleep. He hopes he doesn't have any nightmares tonight. They lie in silence for probably an hour. Although he can't sleep, Tenya at some point figures Izuku and Shoto have drifted off. But then, he hears Izuku shift. You guys asleep? Izuku whispers. No, Shoto mumbles, although he sounds only half awake. Tenya? I'm awake, Tenya answers quickly. He doesn't want to talk, but he also doesn't want to lie to his friends. He pulls his Ingenium plush closer. For a minute, they all lie there quietly. Tenya isn't sure why he feels so scared, but just as he feels like he's about to scream, Izuku speaks again. What do you guys think my quirk is? You can attract small objects, right? Shoto asks. Tenya frowns, puzzled, and admits, I always thought it was intelligence-based, like Principal Nezu. Izuku doesn't immediately answer. When he does, his voice is even quieter, and if Tenya didn't know any better, he would think his best friend is scared. I don't think I have an intelligence quirk, and attraction is my mum's quirk. They lie there in silence for a few minutes. Tenya can't quite figure out why Izuku sounds so unsure. He does know Izuku's quirk didn't manifest until a few months ago, but Uncle Hazashi sat them down and explained that quirks are weird. Sometimes they take longer to appear, and it didn't matter anyway. Tenya loved Izuku when he thought he had a quirk that made him smart, so when Izuku arrived at school, excited about his new quirk, Tenya was just happy for his friend. He knows he should speak up now, because Izuku is obviously unsure about something, but he isn't sure what to say. And honestly, he isn't quite sure he feels up to comforting someone else. You got your quirk from your mom, Shoto states. So? Izuku laughs, but it's a small, wet sound, and Tenya suddenly realizes his friend must be crying. it makes something painful settle in his stomach. Attraction is my mum's quirk. Literally, when she got sick, she gave it to my papa, and then he gave it to me. Tanya's brain screeches to a halt. Your mum could give her quirk to someone? Shoto asks. His tone makes it clear that he's struggling with the idea too. Not quite, Izuku chuckles, and Tanya feels tears in his eyes as he realises how forced it sounds. My papa can take quirks, so Mum asked him to take her quirk and give it to me. Say something. Only I'm like Papa. I can take and give quirks too. Say something. Tanya tries to think of something to say, but the idea of someone being able to take quirks at will, it's scary. Tanya can't help but imagine a villain with that quirk, and he clutches tightly at his plush. And then he fully understands what Izuku just told them. Your mum gave you her quirk? He asks, and somehow the idea makes his fears lessen. He thinks about the picture of Auntie Inko above Izuku's bed, and it fits. He can picture the smiling, kind woman of Uncle Hisashi's tales, wanting her son to get her quirk. That's awesome. Yeah, Shoto agrees. She must have loved you a lot. Like she wanted to always be with you. Tanya soldiers on. It's really nice. Thanks, Izuku sniffs. None of them mention the whole quirk-taking thing. Tanya! 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 Tanya jolts awake, panting as he scans the room. Shoto is still asleep on his futon, but if he squints, he can just make out Izuku leaning over the foot of his bed, staring at him. The sight calms Tanya, and he tries to get his breathing under control. Alt 41 isn't real. There is no villain that can steal quirks. Izuku is safe. You're right, Izuku whispers, concerned. And suddenly it's too much. Suddenly Tanya can't hold back the tears anymore, can't pretend he's a good friend because he's not. Izuku was taken from right under his nose. Izuku couldn't trust him with the truth of his quirk. Tanya promised himself he would be the best friend ever. And now he can't help but think that maybe Izuku would be better off without him. Maybe Izuku and Shota would be better off without Tanya there, always ready to spoil their fun. Hey, come on, let's get a cookie. Tanya doesn't really want a cookie, but it's obvious as they slip out of the room that Izuku isn't quite sure what to do. Normally, it's him or Shoto that end up crying, and Tanya is tasked with comforting his friends. But this is the first time their roles are reversed, and it just makes Tanya feel worse. Halfway to the kitchen, they decide they don't really want anything to eat. It's past 1 a.m, and everyone else is asleep. But they end up hiding behind one of the couches in the living room, Tanya clutching his Ingenium plush, and Izuku attracting his All Might figurine from one hand to the other. Tanya understands now why Izuku always seems to attract things when he's feeling nervous. Did you have a nightmare? Izuku whispers. Tanya nods and wipes at his eyes angrily. Izuku was the one taken, and Tanya's his friend. He should be the one doing the reassuring, not making Izuku feel worse. It's all right, Izuku whispers, and manages a small smile. I've been having them too lately. That just makes Tanya feel worse. They sit in silence for a few minutes. Tanya? Izuku finally speaks up. He sounds quieter, more unsure. Are you mad at me? What? No! Tanya exclaims, a little bit louder than he meant to. He sniffs and wipes at his eyes. You should be mad at me. Why? 'Cause they took you! Tanya sobs. He hasn't told this to anyone, not to Tensei, not to his mum. Nobody knows. And now he can't hold it back any longer. 'Cause I was right there and they took you and I didn't do anything. Izuku puts his arm around his shoulders and waits until Tanya's calmed down a bit. And then, in a quiet, firm voice, he points out, We're 6. What? We're 6, Izuku repeats. And you did do something, didn't you? You got a teacher and she called the police. Yes, but 6. I know, but 6. I should 6. Tanya snickers and he pauses, surprised. He glances over at his friend, and Izuku just grins at him, and Tanya can't help but feel a little better, because sitting here, like this, it's almost a mirror reflection of their early days. He remembers Izuku, sad and missing his mum at daycare, and remembers his own awkward attempts at reassurance. Maybe he isn't such a bad friend if Izuku felt anything like he does now. I mean, if I get kidnapped when we're heroes and you don't do anything, I'll probably be mad. Izuku shrugs. But we're not heroes yet. Yeah? Tenya nods, frowns and stares at Izuku. An idea slowly takes shape in his mind. Izuku shifts awkwardly, obviously uncomfortable with the scrutiny, and I want you to take my quirk. What? Izuku gasps. Not now. Tenya shakes his head. His idea. He hurries on, keen to explain. But if someone is going to kidnap you or hurt you, I want you to take my quirk, 'cause then you can get away. Izuku stares at him wide-eyed. Then he sniffs and laughs, and Tenya is relieved to recognise the wide grin that means it's just another instance of happy tears. Okay, and you're the bestest friend ever. No, you are. No, you are. No, you... Shoto is the best friend ever, and you two need to go back to bed. The two boys look up slowly, and Izuku's father quirks an eyebrow at them in a silent challenge. Tenya smiles as Uncle Hisashi switches off the light, because maybe it's alright if sometimes Izuku comforts him. Maybe he can help Izuku if he's ever taken again. Izuku, he whispers as he rolls over. Normally he tells his friends off for talking after bedtime, since it's important to sleep, but this is important too. Yeah? Izuku whispers back. You know you're my best friend, and I love you, right? You're my bestest friend too. Both of you go to sleep.